All right, so I want to talk about a few concepts this morning. We're going to jump on at 9 o'clock on the Zoom with the New York City team, and then we'll be introducing you to Employee Benefits Division Leader Tess. And then a half hour later, we'll be talking to Dylan, who's in charge of PEO, so we'll be diving on that. And then after that, then we'll break, and then we'll jump into a little bit more on some different kind of case studies. And then they'll break for lunch because they have a lunch and learn. So around 11 o'clock, we'll break, and then we'll talk for us and dive in more on the kind of the business side of things. And then we'll break for lunch around 12 to 1. And then from 1 to this afternoon, I know you got to roll it's up to the Woodlands. But then we'll have Tia, Janae, Meredith, and we're going to talk about process. So ultimately, yesterday we talked a lot about basically different options when it comes to the concepts, some of the design work of putting together term or permanent insurance. But then most importantly is, I got a guy, I got a girl, right? Like, I want to go into senior business, how do I do that here? And so very differently than when you did it at the producer side, right? But when you're at Prudential, it's Prudential stuff. So you go off to the shelf and you say, hey, Prudential, I want one of your life insurance policies. Here it is, right? When it's on the broker side, you basically get the client's information, right? This is where it's a little bit different. So your typical stance, right, is that you have your client, you have you, and you have an insurance company, okay? So a lot of times if you represent one particular insurance company, they contract with you, you go out to the client, bring it back. So basically what you are is you're a liaison for that insurance company. The difference here is we're taking your conversation that you have with the client, with you, and now we're going to insurance carriers, plural, right? So we might have an idea that we might think we might want to go with National Life or Pac Life, depending on the numbers that we saw, and let's say the quote for term insurance or the IUL with particular riders on it. But then when we start going to the carriers with your particular client's profile, they then get to, in a sense, fight for the business, okay? So that's where it's going to be much different, where if you're used to this scenario of, hey, where's that e-app, where's that piece of paper, let me take it with, X particular company and go out to the client and have them sign it. It's not that way here. We have the client first fill out their information, and we then go to the carriers, and they then get to see who's going to be the best suit for them, okay? And it's not always based on price, right? So just have a look at kind of what are the different options and opportunities there. Some might, we talk about accelerated underwriting, which basically means that you're able to get the policy without having to go through a rigorous medical. So a lot of times in doing life insurance, you're going to give a sample of your urine, your blood, your lifestyle history, your financial history, right? All that information out there. Hello, Joanna. And that's the way it's going to be. Okay. So what I wanted to talk about is a few of these concepts here. That we won't get to all of them this morning in the next half hour. But the big one I wanted to talk about was, you guys have probably heard of this question. Okay. Which option would you take So here's the option.
For how long?
So this one goes, let's just say for 31 days, the month of January. Okay? January 1, I come to you and I say, hey, I'll either give you a $5 million right now today, or I'll give you a penny day that's going to double in value obviously later. So day 1, you get a penny, tomorrow it becomes 2, next day it becomes 4, next day it becomes 8, etc. Which option would you take? John probably knows this answer. You probably know this answer based on business.
Seen the movie.
I know the answer, but I don't know what the maths adds up to, but it's the bottom.
It's the bottom one. And why is that though? Why is this one so powerful?
You're doubling
You're
every
doubling
day.
the value. You're doubling the value. So
You multiply.
if you do the math really quickly, with an Excel spreadsheet, it's much quicker. By day 30, you're about $5 million. Day 31, this becomes over $10 million. Okay? So this is the power of compound interest. You guys are familiar probably with the rule of 72. What's that, John? He's not in his head?
12 years at 6%, 6 years at 12% to double it.
So you take an interest rate and you divide it into 72, that'll be the number of years it takes to double, right? So perfect example, I get a 10% rate of return on my money. In 7.2 years, it will double in value. The rule of 103, same concept, but now this is to triple the value, right? So again, take that number, 10%, divide it into 103, excuse me, this is 72, and then in 10.3 years, it's going to triple. Okay? So that's where this is powerful from an accumulation perspective, but also dangerous in the loan perspective, right? This is where people can find themselves in a world of hurt in their credit cards, their mortgages, their auto loans, right? This can be an absolute killer to them financially. So the power of compound interest exists. The reason why I bring it up today is in particular with you. What you're doing today, if you read the book Good to Great, they talk about a flywheel. They talk about momentum. I think John Maxwell calls it the power of momentum, getting it going.
So the author of Good to Great?
Jim Collins. John Maxwell, author, I think, of like 24 books, but that in particular is called 21
Irrefutable Rules of Leadership.
Yeah. And so that's the idea, right? Is that in order to get momentum going, you and I have to be, number one, consistent on what we're doing, okay? And so that's going to be from what you're learning. So what we're putting into our brain when we're, in the drive time, coming to the office, putting in the effort, right, of the activity that we talked about. My son once asked me, he goes, Dad, when do you think I'll be able to lift a 35-pound dumbbell? He asked me that like he was about 12. He's 14 going on 15 now. And so I thought to myself, well, when did I start lifting the 35-pound dumbbell to do, some curls? And so I thought, okay, well, when I was his age, I worked out basically every day for an hour in the gym. Took a bunch of protein shakes. I was just scrying. So there was this, like Rocky was like my living mantra, right? And so I did that, and then, but then most recently as an adult, I had a 25-pound dumbbell. Or was it 20? I think it was 20 actually, at my office. And so I would do curls. So I was on a webinar, I was on a conference call, I would do curls. And so I would do 10 at a time, so I didn't want to break a sweat. And then what happened though, in a day, is that I was able to get 21 sets in. So then I was like, oh, I better work the other side, so I started to and then I slowly moved it up. So in my mind, I thought to my son, okay, if you want to lift 35-pound dumbbell, well, let's say when you're at a particular age, you lift 21 sets of 10 reps, and you do that for 1 year on 20 pounds. Or maybe it's probably 6 months actually, and then I level up to 25. Right? And so you look at that and you go, okay, well that's 21 sets, that's 210 reps in a day. I didn't do it every day, I did it about 3 times a week. So that's 630 reps per week. And let's just say I did that for 40 weeks because there's probably some days off that I didn't go to the office or whatnot, I was traveling, etc. So now we're looking at, sorry, my math isn't that great. It's actually pretty good actually, to be honest, but so 25,200 reps. Okay, so you do that, son, and then you'll probably get closer to being to the 35-pound dumbbell, right? So the same thing kind of works here. What we find is there's a phenomenal book by Malcolm Gladwell called David versus Goliath. If you're familiar with this biblical story, David's just a scrawny person, Goliath's a giant, right? He has a sword, huge armor. David, I think, couldn't even lift up his shield, right? Just based on the size of is described by Goliath. The one thing that they talk about in this book in particular is the power of 10,000 hours to become, I want to say very competent, but almost expert level of competency.
That's the book that has the 10,000 hours principles explained.
Yeah.
I've heard that principle, but I didn't know what book it came out of. I did know about it.
Yeah. So the whole concept here, what they looked at was those that made it in the first chair at the
Symphony.
Philharmonic Symphony, right? And they looked at those that played the first chair, and they said, what, when did you start playing? How many hours were you practicing, right? And it wasn't a lot. They typically started around 4 or 5 years old, and that was the same for the first chair and the second chair. They both had an early introduction to music. And then each of them put in about a half hour or so every day. So on a week of 5 days a week, that was about 2.5 hours, right? So it wasn't this excessive amount of time, right? It was 30 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day. But then what happened is, between the first chair and the second chair, is a lot of times the second chair was interested in another instrument. And so their attention was taken away. The third chair, or oftentimes if you look at a music teacher, their attention on a variety of different music instruments has been completely varied. So even though it's 10,000 hours that they put in, it was the violin, then the viola, then the saxophone, then the flute, then the piano, then the xylophone, right? And because their attention was spread out, this 10,000 hours, on a variety of different instruments, they never became a master of one. And so when you look at the first chair, they were putting in about 10,000 hours from the age of 4, about the time that they were playing as a first chair. The second chair, whatever got in the way, a lot of times it was that distraction of maybe 1 or 2 years playing a different instrument, they were doing about 8,000 hours. And then when Malcolm Gladwell, he interviews, and so this is just something he had put together in his notes, right? So this is not when the final product of the book comes out. So he's talking to the father of the internet, the guy that basically founded Oracle. And he asks him about what's that?
Ellison.
Yeah. And he goes, when did you start programming? He actually started programming in high school. And he goes, how many hours was it before you started basically creating the code for the internet? And he thought about it for a little bit, and he goes, 10,000 hours. And so that's where this kind of antithesis came. But if you kind of look at it, you break down this 10,000 hours, you go 40 hours a week, okay? That would equate to about 5 years of time. So if you look at people's competency, you think about, hey, making it in this business of insurance and financial services, it's almost always been, you got a 5-year cliff. You almost talk to the SBA, hey, what you want to get to is 5 years and your business becomes more successful or more likely to be successful for perpetuity, right? And the reason is because you put in that competency. So as you think about compound interest, think of it for yourselves. In this business, it's going to be having face-to-face meetings, right? /Zoom, right? It's the world that we live in, right? Also, I will say because of the world that we're living in now, the phone call is just as powerful right now, right? There's many people doing business literally on the phone right now, where just 3 years ago, people much preferred this kind of engagement with what we did. So you're going to want to make sure that you're having as many of these meetings face-to-face and Zoom or phone calls as possible to move people from what we call prospect to client to raving fan. Okay? Raving fan, the difference is that they talk about you to their family or friends. Unsolicited.
Yeah.
They just say, hey, you're not talking with somebody? Gotta talk to my guy John. Totally helped me out, got me streamlined. I got things going from a strategy perspective, right? And so, but that doesn't happen by accident, right? So one of the places I used to live was Wisconsin. In the state of Wisconsin, they have literally an obsession for the Green Bay Packers. It is one of the smallest marketplaces in the United States. Right? If you take up the entire Green Bay area, you get to almost 1 million people. Right? The actual city of Green Bay, if you look at it on the map, I think it's anywhere between 400 to 500,000 people. That is it. But in the stadium, every single seat is owned by a season ticket holder.
Oh, wow.
I met a woman, she was 33 years old. Her parents at birth put her on the waiting list. She is still on the waiting list for that. So every single, like you cannot, the only way that you can get a ticket is you're literally buying it from an owner that has those season tickets, right? There's no call, there's no ticket booth. It's phenomenal, and this is literally passed on generation to generation. Okay, so how do you get that kind of raving fan? It didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen by accident. And so that's what you want to be able to get with your fans is with your clients is what are you doing to really know them? This is know your client. Do they like coffee or tea? Dog or cat? Chinese food or Vietnamese food? Breakfast or lunch? What are their aspirations? What's on their bucket list? Where do they want a vacation? What do they want for their children? What do they want for their spouse? Do we really know our clients that well? Because the moment that you can't engage with them in a way that is meaningful to them, then you have a raving fan. So you know that they love Starbucks over McDonald's. When you send them a Starbucks, they're tickled pink. They love McDonald's, you send them a Starbucks card, it's nice, but it doesn't hit the mark, right? Just like if somebody sends me a Starbucks card, useless. I don't drink any coffee, and I don't believe in the idea of going and buying a $5 cup of hot cocoa. Plus, because we live in Houston, I don't drink hot drinks. So when it comes to this power of compound interest, this is where the rubber hits the road for each of us. Is every day being consistent with where you want to go and where you want to play. So that might be the niche that you want to focus in on, and then it might be the phone calls that you're needing to make, or the conversations that you need to move along in the process. This butts against the wonderful book that recently came out, probably maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, called Atomic Habits. Are you guys familiar with this book?
Yeah.
See John nodding his head. John, have you had a chance to read the book, or what do you know about it?
I did read the book.
Okay.
So there's a lot of great stuff in it, but probably the single nugget that you would take away from it to act on immediately is an increment of improvement every day, 1% improvement at a time.
Yes.
Don't need to make the big leap. Don't need to dive into the new fitness program, whole hog and burn yourself out.
Yeah.
Small increments count.
Yeah. So I love that because I was just talking to my buddy. And every year he's like, I need to get back in shape. Now last year he did break his big toe. And so he was really out of commission, needed a lot of rest. And so he put on some additional post-COVID weight, as we like to call it. And so he's like, man, I'm way heavier than I've ever been, not in a good place. But where he always likes to go is he likes to go to the burnout. So he's like, I haven't worked out in 6 months, so I'm gonna go to the gym tomorrow for an hour.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go on the scale, I'm gonna weigh myself, and I'm gonna get out the calipers, and I'm gonna grab my body, my fat, right? And that is completely demoralizing. And he knows it. He knows it about himself. He knows that he's going to burn himself out after that first workout, and then he won't work out for a few days because he's totally sore and he can't move. But that's just how he's wired, right? And so this is the idea. So do you remember the story that they gave of the British cycling team? They were just a garbage team, right? For a century, for 100 years. And then they hired this coach, and the coach is all about this. He had a fancy name for it, right? Like marginal improvement or something like that. There's just this idea of just incremental growth on a daily basis. Do you remember some of the things that he had them looking at though, which was really interesting beyond just fitness of riding a bike?
Their uniforms, the aerodynamic characteristics of the uniforms. It seems like there were some small equipment tweaks, just little things, all of which added up.
One of the ones that I thought was interesting is they would notice you're sleeping with a particular pillow. Yeah. And so let's say John liked a particular pillow, and he's gonna go, he's gonna go cycle in France, bring your pillow. Right? Why are we relying upon the Marriott or the Hilton or whatever to supply your pillow that you already know is good for you? Right? The other one that I thought that was really interesting, because a lot of times in these, not only are you a racer, but you're also a mechanic. Right? So you get the picture on the bike, right? And so what they did is they painted the inside of their trailer. It was white. So that way they could see if there was anything that has come, like, fallen off or, leaking or whatever. And again, I'm not an expert on bikes.
Yeah.
I just know they have wheels. Wheels, gears, and brakes. And so not only they looked at a multitude of things, what they were eating, just to be able to see what could we be doing to get just a little bit better, right? And so what they found was, I think it was the indoor uniform was better than the outdoor uniform. And so they started using their indoor uniform in outside races. So what happened though is, if you look at British cycling for the last 3 Olympics, they've literally dominated the sport. Men and women's, even in this last Olympics in South Korea, they literally killed it with most gold medals, most silvers. It was just an absolute domination by the British cycling team. And so because you look at that, and that's a 12-year span time, right? That's 3 different Olympics from China to where was the other one? Before China. It was Brazil, and then South Korea. So this attitude of this 1% of incremental growth every day has now become a culture of what they do as a cycling team. So because in that 12-year time span, players have gone in and out, right? It's not the same exact team riding the Olympics every single time. It's different players that are coming in and out. But the culture of this incremental growth is what's staying. So how does this apply to you? It's doing things that can consistently get you to where you want to go. So one of the things that I love about the book is he goes, if you want to eat more fruits and vegetables, pull them out. Make them accessible. Make them accessible, right? So, and literally, that's at the house, that's what we do. We have this, bowl of apples, and they're washed, ready to go. All you have to do is just grab it on the way out. Banana, same thing. They're in this bowl, you just grab it, right? And so the reason why it's there is that if I put it inside the refrigerator and put it on the bottom shelf, no one's seeing it. And then I come in, and all of a sudden this thing's brown, and I'm like, oh, now we have banana bread, right?
Wash it.
Exactly. Or it talked about when people, if they're going to go to the gym, first build the habit of driving to the gym, right? Because if you don't have a habit of going to the gym, what's going to get you to the habit of actually going to the gym and then exercising? So making small growth is the crucial element here. As you also look at what you can be doing here in this business, because we do have work from home, is how are you working best? Where is your best location? Is it in the office? Is it in your car? Is it at the house? Figure out where is your best place to get the most amount of work. For me, a lot of times if I'm stuck in that room, I can get stuck behind emails and phone calls and I never see the team. That's not healthy for someone that's meant to be leading a team, right? And helping them grow. So that's why for me, I sit out here in the bullpen. So that way I'm here, accessible, right? There's no walls, there's no doors, there's nothing keeping me away from being physically accessible to people, okay? And so that's, again, one of those just a small little habits that you can do. For other people, it might be just ease of doing business, right? So whether that's, hey, you have business cards in your pocket, you have business cards in your car, you have business cards inside your wallet, you have them ready to go, you have a QR code, whatever it is that it allows you to be able to just promote who you are, the quicker, the better. So that way you don't have to think about it. It should be automatic, some of these things that we're doing in order to create the habits that lead to our success. So what are those habits? What would you say, Tariq, you've been in the business many, many years. So what would you say are the habits that lead to success in our business? What's the habits of a successful advisor?
I mean, number one, you have to be active, and you need to have something in your inventory that you must. Number one, you have to be active. Number two, you must have some, things to do list, what you need to do. Things to do list is very important. If you want to call your, you're looking for new client, you're looking for existing client, you're going to call them for the service, you're going to call them for the new, ask for referred leads. greet them on a special occasion, look for the change, there's a change in their life,
Okay.
you know, like kids getting married or, you know, like having a new baby, new promotion, new job, change in the, you know, change in their lifestyle, getting ready to retire.
Okay.
You know, I mean, like a lot of time, it is a good opportunity to talk to people when they have a lot of money sitting in 401k. They need to roll it over within 30 days.
Yep.
So that's a pretty good time. So, I mean, habits of being successful is just you need to be active. You know, you need to be active. You know, get into a habit of working.
Yes.
I mean, the simple answer is, if you want to be successful, you need to find, you know, when you wake up, you need to find something to do, and be consistent with it. You know, I mean, that's off my. I can't think of.
What would you add to that, John?
So, setting aside all of the, you know, non-bike riding stuff, like your sleep habits, your exercise habits, which I think is an entire category directly related to that.
Yes.
But focusing more on our on the bike stuff. So everything that Tariq is saying, you know, for me, at least personally, I try to kind of ritualize all of the different components. So we were talking about meetings, scheduling meetings, and marketing. You know, those three
Yes.
buckets of time. For me, I like to structure a calendar and designate times for that, and then just have a ritual by which, and so like those three buckets really are more complex, and you wind up
Correct.
with a lot of different things. But you know, when I have a process and I know what I'm doing on Monday most weeks, other than outlier weeks.
Yes.
Tuesday, Wednesday, you know, structure that whole week, and so I get in the follow-up calls in which I'm finding out about, you know, changes that have happened to in somebody's life or insurance reviews or whatever. I'm doing the social networking, all of those different kinds of things. But you know, the things that work for me in terms of building and sustaining business, fitting that into structure and having a personal ritual. I know what time I'm gonna sit down at my desk every day, and I know when I'm gonna start making those phone calls or doing those LinkedIn posts or something like that.
I love it.
I
So
want to add one. You know,
Go ahead, Matt.
regard. Basically, it boils down to you gotta have a plan. You don't have a plan, you gotta have a plan. You need to make a plan and make sure your plan works for you, and you must have some goals.
yeah.
What you want to achieve in your life. Yes, you have to have some goals. And as Tony Robinson says once, you need to raise your standard. I mean, you need to upscale your living. So set some high goals. You know, you want to get a better house, you want to get a better car, you want to put about $15,000-$20,000 of wardrobe so you can have some decent clothes. Have some you're gonna spend 2 weeks with your family. Go overseas or do something. So just raise your standard of living. I mean, have some high goals.
So where I'm going to take that is kind of going from agent to biz owner. So when you're a business owner, you put together a plan. When you're a business owner, you look at your profit and loss, which in this business is commission. Oh, that was meant to be P&L. Sorry, P&L. You look at your commissions versus your own personal goal budget, right? So let's say, for example, I need to make over $110,000 this year in commission. Well, where am I on pace? I'm at 60. I'm at 120. I'm at 150. Where am I on that scale to hit my goal? right? And that's exactly where planning comes in crucially. And I found that that's a big difference between someone that treats this like a sales job. Like I'm checking in, checking out. Hey, Sherm, what do you think I should do? If you're asking me to tell you what you should be doing, then you're thinking more like an agent, an advisor, and not like a business owner, right? And then activity, you guys hit it right on the head, that's crucial. Stay organized. I find this to be extremely powerful when we're leveraging a CRM like HubSpot, which again we'll get access to with you guys, and that way we'll be leveraging that one. And then finally, the last one, I will say that a habit people want to have is learning, right? Tariq, you had mentioned that you have LUTC courses and you have designations, right? You've gotten some things beyond your life and property and casualty, those things in the past. So learning is crucial in this business, but learning exactly what you want to know. So if you want to know about gaming and commercial property and casualty, that's what you have to then plan aside to learn it. There's too much of this happening that if you don't put this in your week, it's going to fly right by you, right? So if you want to learn about premium financing, literally, you can Google it. It's probably easier just to go to Life Brokerage, talk to Anthony, say, hey, Life Brokerage, what should I be doing? What should I be knowing? What should I be learning? Harvey was in the other day. Hey, what should I be knowing about premium finance? Oh, you should be talking to Brianne. She's the one that basically does the illustrations. Well, Brianne, can you send me some examples? What do I need to know about premium financing, right? And so learn it from the source versus learning it from the internet, right? Because the value of that as well is you're building relationships in the industry that's gonna be very, very powerful. If we don't set time aside for this, we're gonna find ourselves using old strategies or old ideas that have now fallen away, right? It's like me going to the dentist that's still using those old x-ray things. They're not using a digital camera. I'm like, dude, I'm not coming here again, right? Because if you haven't kept up your skill set in the industry, then I don't think that you're gonna keep up with where my needs are in my oral hygiene. Which, by the way, when they look at the greatest invention that was ever created was the toothbrush in the last 150 years or something crazy, because it extended people's life. Because what happened is when people were brushing their teeth, at some age, eventually, their teeth fell apart. They couldn't get enough nutrients in over time, and their life was much less, well, one, enjoyable, but two, substantially promoted. So just remember that next time you brush your teeth, this is keeping me alive longer. Okay. All right. So let's go jump on. We're gonna listen to Tess and then and Dylan. We're just gonna go here into the back into the conference room here.